The immigration system has a way of humiliating people who did everything right. You spend a decade building something, you publish, and you get cited a ton. You win awards, major ones. Your work gets implemented widely. You have letters from important people. You have credentials that would make most people's resumes look thin by comparison. You file an EB-1A petition. You think this should be approved. And then, you know what's coming, don't you? The RFE is coming. The RFE lands. It's asking for things that aren't in the rules, things that don't match what the policy manual actually says. What? What's happening? You believed in the policy manual fully. You read it, you followed it, you did what it said exactly. At what point do you realize the game changed? Without anyone telling you it changed, without anyone publishing the new rules, without any announcement at all, without any new rule, in fact. Here's what's happening. Here are the numbers. EB-1A denials have nearly doubled in 12 months. From 26% in Q4 2024 to 47% in Q4 2025. Almost 1 in 2 cases is now ending in a denial. That's not a minor uptick. That's a different chart. And when denial rates move like that, when they move that fast, there's usually a good explanation. Multiple reasons, surely, but there seems to be a primary one. And it's not applicant quality. I don't think applicant quality fell off a cliff. Not that suddenly. I don't think hordes of unqualified people woke up one morning and decided they were extraordinary. Though as a card-carrying optimist, I find the image that thousands of completely ordinary people their alarm goes off and they sit up in bed and they say, "Today I'm extraordinary." I find that charming, but I find it a charming fiction. It is a fiction. It's a convenient one, and it's wrong. When you find evidence supporting it, let me know. What actually happened is adjudication changed, and here's the proof. During that same 12-month period, the same period when EB-1A denials nearly doubled, the O1 visa saw denials rise from 5 to 7%, 2%. Yes, they rose, but that's a small increase. 2% is an increase in the same sense that my stubbed toe is an injury. The O1 visa uses a similar extraordinary ability standard. It attracts a similar applicant pool, similar researchers, founders, experts, actors. Sometimes it's the very same person applying for both. So let me ask you something. If the applicants got worse, if a wave of unqualified people flooded into the extraordinary ability space, why did both categories not collapse together? Why did one have the denial rate nearly double and the other's denial rate barely move? Basically, there are only 2 possible answers here. Either the EB-1A applicants got dramatically worse while the O1 applicants stayed the same, which doesn't make sense, or something changed inside the EB-1A adjudication process itself. Those are the only two options. Pick one. Applicants did not. In some coordinated act of mass self-sabotage, become dramatically less qualified for the EB-1A while remaining perfectly qualified for the O1. Now, I'll admit, the coordinated act of mass self-sabotage is entertaining to picture. I mean, just think about the sheer magnificent logistics of it. A newsletter is sent out to the world's leading geneticists, jazz clarinetists, machine learning experts, and quantum physicists. A meeting is called, a convention center booked, an event planner hired. The planner makes sure to hang a big banner that reads, "Prepare an underwhelming EB-1A case, but really give it your all on the O1. You'd have PhDs sitting in a circle practicing how to sound profoundly mediocre." It's a wonderful image. It is also complete nonsense. What changed was adjudication. And I want to slow down here for a second because this is the part that actually bothers me. It does bother me. It really does. When a denial rate climbs because the applicant genuinely got weaker, that's just the system doing its job. Unpleasant, but fair. That is not what's happening here. Here, you now have many, many great petitioners, great people. They are, I talk to them. They're great personally and professionally. They're humble and accomplished. You have these great people with extraordinary careers who are not wise to some adjudicators' recalibrations. They get denied. And it's sad because they're real people with real accomplishments, real backstories, real acclaim, real mortgages, real hopes, real romantic relationships, real families. They're people who have, when placed in the right hands, a good case. I see these petitioners. They reach out to me after a denial or an RFE wondering what happened. Usually the answer is not, "You lack extraordinary ability." If that's the honest answer, I tell them gently, but I tell them. The answer is usually strategy. And I know strategy satisfies no one. It sounds dry and abstract and the kind of word a consultant reaches for right before he hands you the bill. So let me get specific. 3 strategic failures, 3 reasons strong people lose. And I will generously skip laying out the strategic failure of not hiring a lawyer to do the important work of building a case for you. Though the position that you should hire a lawyer is one that I agree with wholeheartedly. And full disclosure, economically. The first failure comes from a kind of innocence. The belief that if you meet the published standard, you've met the standard. But USCIS has shown a stunning willingness to depart from its own rules and tell no one. If the rules clearly say you need only do A, B, and C to satisfy a criterion, don't think that is all the adjudicator will demand. Your adjudicator may say that you did not satisfy the criterion because you didn't do D, E, F. And for good measure, R. R? Where did R come from? You're thinking. Naturally, I have a name for this kind of thing. Several, actually. Bureaucratic ad hocism. Policy experimentation. institutional freelancing. Pick your favorite, but whatever you call it, the practice is unfair twice. Through the practice, the adjudicator made the test harder by adding requirements, and they made it harder in secret. Because if you work without a lawyer, you have no reason to expect the additional requirements exist. Let me make it concrete. Take criterion 5, original contributions of major significance. The policy manual tells officers how to evaluate the major significance. It gives them examples, not an exhaustive list of what they may want to look for. Examples include whether published materials speak to the significance of the contribution, whether testimonials, letters, and affidavits speak to the work, whether the work has been cited at a level that indicates major significance, whether the work has resulted in patents, licenses, or whether there has been commercial use of the work. You give evidence in your case addressing some of these considerations. You pull together citation reports, evidence of commercial adoption, detailed letters from independent experts. You hand the officer precisely what the manual describes. And yet, here's the language you see show up in an RFE or a denial on this criterion. The petitioner's contributions must set them significantly above others in the field. This is not from the policy manual. This is not from a case. This requirement. The manual asks, essentially, whether the field responded significantly to your contribution. The adjudicator asks whether your contributions significantly outrank the field's contributions. Those are different questions, answered by different arguments and evidence. Here's what this may feel like. You take your driving test. The official manual says to pass, you must stop completely at the line, signal for 3 seconds, and park within 12 inches of the curb. You do it all perfectly. Then the instructor, or I should say the evaluator, turns to you and says, failing grade. You didn't prove you can drive a Formula 1 car faster than Lewis Hamilton. You'd look at them like they've lost their mind. You'd say, that wasn't the test. And they shrug and say, it is today. It is today, the test. Now, to be fair, there is a place in the EB-1A where you do need to be near the top of your field. It's the final merits determination, step 2. It is not supposed to be smuggled into step 1, the criterion step. In the real example I gave you, that's what happened. It's an illustration of USCIS not playing by its own rules. And if you have no answer to that RFE, the RFE demanding evidence that your contributions set you significantly above others in your field, you lose. You'll have failed a criterion that doesn't exist. A test nobody even told you you were sitting for. What a thing to fail. And I'll be honest about how I feel about this. This should not happen in America. It shouldn't. We're supposed to be fairer than this. It's repugnant. And it's a pattern. You just can't see the pattern from inside one case, your case. Neither can an attorney who handles one of these cases a month or a quarter or a year. You need perspective. But if you read enough RFEs back to back, day after day, it becomes undeniable that this pattern exists. These adjudicators, they aren't applying the criteria as much as they are rewriting them in many instances. One page at a time in private notices. By that I mean RFEs and denials. They are rewriting them. And you only get to read those private notices when you're on the verge of losing. It's sad. And I'm too old to cry about it. So let's talk about strategic failure number 2. The second strategic failure is treating the record like the argument. The record is not the argument. And confusing the two quietly kills cases. The record is the pile of material you submit to USCIS. The record includes things like forms, exhibits, letters, awards, screenshots, PDFs you generated at 1:48 in the morning after a mild psychological collapse. That's the record. It is the raw, unshaped stone, with the exception of the recommendation letters. Those should be quite chiseled. The argument, though, it is the sculpture an attorney like me builds from the stone. The argument lives in the brief, and I keep seeing accomplished people submit an aesthetically magnificent record alongside a painfully weak argument. The record looks beautiful. Colored tabs, clean formatting, clean as the Board of Health, my grandmother might have said. Every exhibit is labeled, exhibits named well in the table of contents, annotations on the exhibits, guiding the adjudicator's attention, page numbers, of course. Now, the record almost always can use some substantive work, like the inclusion of additional documents, or there can be better letters or more authoritative sources. But it's good, it looks good at least in many serious cases. But then you turn to the brief itself. And there, the brief is skeletal in nature. It's curt, it's clipped, it's formulaic. Emotional, narrative, persuasion chips are quite tragically left on the table. You read sentences like, Exhibit K1 shows the petitioner published an article. Or Exhibit K2 shows the journal is distributed internationally. In moments like this, I feel bad for the petitioner. Here they've clearly put a lot of effort in their case. It's obvious from the record. But they're not arguing wisely. They're requiring the record to do the heavy lifting. That is not advocacy. That is drafting a table of contents that has delusions of grandeur. A real brief does more than point at evidence. A real brief fights for you. It builds a momentum that tells the adjudicator exactly which conclusion to draw before they have the opportunity to wander off and arrive at a far more combative one. Because make no mistake about who's reading your petition package. These officers are not looking to help you. Many of them are moving fast, hunting for the easy deficiency, the quick denial. To a reader like that, a weak brief is not a neutral document. It's an invitation to send an RFE. Most people don't build a strong brief, which is sad given the stakes of these cases. Even many attorneys don't. And that's a big reason cases fail at such a high rate. The third failure is another one that I see very often. Making an assertion without enough proof behind it. I call it the corroboration gap. An assertion without significant corroboration carries little or no weight. And here's the painful part. It's painful to see it sometimes because the assertion is often completely true. However, the adjudicator's job isn't to figure out the truth. Their job is to decide if the paperwork and evidence you submitted are strong enough to meet the legal requirements. I'll give you an example of the corroboration gap. You say, I have a critical role in a distinguished organization. You're proud of it. It sounds damn near noble. Then USCIS, the adjudicator says, noted. That's it. And then the questions come. Where's the proof? Where's the org chart? The letter from leadership describing your role? The evidence that you played a role in the organization's success. I mean, a significant role. The evidence showing that the organization itself is distinguished. If the corroboration, a significant amount of it in this adjudicatory climate, by the way, is missing for any of the necessary elements or sub-elements or any of the criteria, the adjudicator writes a sentence to the effect of, the petitioner asserts X, but is not sufficiently corroborated X. Back to the example. You may genuinely have a critical role in a distinguished organization, which doesn't reach the heart of the immigration question. USCIS wants evidence, yet people often assert some requirement is established without providing enough support, as if earnestness or sincerity were enough to clothe a naked assertion. In this cold climate, this cold adjudicatory climate, it definitely is not. Neither of those are enough. At best, earnestness and sincerity are a pair of dress socks. So 3 ways strong people lose. 1, assuming USCIS will play by the rules. 2, mistaking the record for the argument. 3, assertions in dress socks. So here's what I need you to understand. If your credentials are strong, and if you're still listening, they probably are, strong is no longer enough. Strong credentials are not enough anymore. They're necessary, but they're not sufficient. What matters now is whether your petition is built strategically, whether you anticipate where the attacks will come from, whether your brief creates a sense of inevitability, whether every assertion is backed by enough evidence that an adjudicator can't claim you didn't prove it. That's the difference between a strong applicant who gets denied and a strong applicant who gets approved. It's not just your credentials, it's the case that is built around them. Most people trying this alone, trying the EB-1A process alone, will lose. Even most immigration attorneys will lose. And in part, it's because they don't spend their time reading RFEs and denials looking for patterns. They don't see the hidden tests. They don't understand that the rules changed and continue to change. But there are attorneys who do. We see these patterns. We understand what's actually being asked, not what the manual claims is being asked. We build petitions designed for the real changing adjudicatory environment, not the theoretical one. So if your credentials are strong and you're thinking about filing, or you've already got an RFE and you can feel that that your current strategy isn't working, reach out. The contact information is in the description. Don't file without understanding that the game has changed. And don't file with someone who hasn't noticed. If this was useful, subscribe. There's more on the way.